Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here, and get ready for Gnosis. Well, as I have been writing or making a continual series, and will continue it as well, on Shirley Maclaine and her books. Now, she is an important person in the actual New Age metaphysical movement. It has been for many, many years. Actually, since 1983, when her book was published about her experiences with the metaphysical, the New Age, the spiritual at a high level. We do have to understand that it's more metaphysical based. Spiritual, of course, which all these things weave in and out of, has a religious tint to it. When we're talking about other beliefs and empowerments and extraterrestrials and other things, I mean, this covers a vast area. Now, I really don't know what to make of her. I've studied her stuff. I've read her daughter's book, which we did a review on, which is pretty scathing against her attitude. And basically, this work and the rest of her works kind of confirms what her daughter says. Because, first of all, she's never really even mentioned or thought about. She thinks a lot of her little boyfriends and her crotch. But I don't see her discussing much about the one child, the one thing she has in life. But, I found this, and one reason why I rejected the New Age movement, like I rejected yogaism, we sit in our diapers, and pretty much all of those, even traditional religion as a past Catholic, is the fact that it's really a hollow place. And the problem is it's all made up of people who are kind of messed up. They're all messed up people. I don't know if they're really trying to do anything better or not, but Shirley Maclaine, my take on her, she's a very typical messed up, contrived, and has all the problems that typical females have. Now, of course, males have problems as well. I think males are kind of simplistic cavemen. They're Fred Flintstones. As I always say, it's pizza, porn, and beer. And that certainly is not a very evolved state. Of course, you're almost forced into these kind of realities when you have to deal with, if you do deal with, females in general who seem to be so odd and weird. And certainly this comes out in her female attitudes in her entire book, but that just makes her very common, and that's what Shirley Maclaine is. She's very common. She's uneducated. She graduated high school. She started dancing, she claims, when she was 2. Remember that, Shirley? I'm not sure you can dance when you're 2. You don't even have muscles in your feet to do it. I like how all these people think they made it on their own from her middle-class family who were in show business, at least at a period of time, are interested in that area. They were active, who supported you as best they could. And of course, you've been successful since you've been in high school. Well, she never really struggled that much. She got dancing jobs in New York right away, very young, and then got break after break from different people. And I have to wonder how that happens. But, this is very typical of life. Someone else makes you. Producers, other people notice you, and they put you in their films for one reason or another. And I'm not sure what all the side deals are. But the bottom line is that that's how it works, and she's had that and this happens to a lot of people. A noted actor I was just looking at who died recently, Robert Vaughn of Man from U.N.C.L.E. fame, got jobs, and his family was in the acting industry. His father and mother, I believe both, and he was able to get acting jobs anytime he wanted it, and was able to make okay money to lots of money. Well, this is unheard of, as people are starving actors all over Hollywood, trying to make it, get their break, who are very talented singers, actors, etc. I grew up in Los Angeles. I spoke to and knew many of these people. It's very hard to get in. How does somebody get in? How does some people get show after show that they are placed in? People like Ted Danson go from one show to another, but I guess it makes sense. You're a star, people like you, they tune in to see you again. So there is something, I guess, to that, but not many people are given many breaks. So she did very easy. Yeah, she was a youngy kitty with the rest of the dancers in New York City and making nothing and didn't have any money for food. Well, this is very typical of the industry. She wasn't forced into that. I mean, after all, she could have went to college like everybody else. She graduated high school, and this was her thing. And she seems to be a very dedicated, stubborn-headed girl who was going to make it one way or another and do whatever it takes. She also has very strange views in terms of the world. Now, it's very odd for a girl, I think she's from Virginia, with relatively common parents, to decide that she didn't want regular relationships. Now, this is very typical of the time as well. You got to remember this is the 60s and 70s, and things were very open depending on where you are. Well, certainly not in my neighborhood. I was in high school in the 70s, and nobody was doing nothing except the dopers were smoking a little dope. So there wasn't much going on. As a matter of fact, it was extremely conservative, basically movie community. All the peasants lived where I came from and grew up and went to Hart High School in Valencia, the only high school named after a movie star. But this is where all these studio people eventually moved to, the people who were, directors and hauled stuff around, secretaries, etc. They all lived in this neighborhood. And they were all as conservative as you can get. There was nothing going on in any of these things. Certainly there wasn't any free sex, and other than smoking the dopey, which has been going on for a long time, nothing was happening. We're talking about very, very conservative communities, and this is north of Los Angeles. So I don't know where all this is, but I always seem to miss the party. So I keep looking for it, and I can't seem to find it. So these are for selected people, and they don't let anybody in, particularly if you're smart and aggressive and want to get ahead, because they don't want the competition. So I hear all these stories, and I don't know. But so she didn't want. So she married some goofball guy who convinced her that he was an alien. He was paying him $60,000 a month. That's equivalent to probably $200,000 or $300,000 a month now. So the whole idea is that's a huge amount of money, while her daughter got nothing. Or very little. Oh, they paid for private. So what? You go to private school and you have a nickel in your pocket. I don't know what that means. So the whole idea, and I don't know how true all that is, but if you look and carefully watch, and of course, as a gnosis master and a trained researcher, I look for things, and I notice how cheap she is in general. And in this book, Will also goes into how cheap it was. In one of her excursions to, it's nice to be rich and famous and have a female organ to wave around to get what you want. So the whole idea is that it's kind of reality. So one of the female guides that was there, a poor Peruvian girl, liked her watch ring. And I don't know how expensive. Of course, she has millions and spent millions, hundreds of millions, and traveled all around the world, dropping $500 or $600 in fancy hotels so she could screw her little playboy that she was connected to. It's some socialist politician. But she found that this was very upsetting to give her ring to this person, even though she was in a place and these people have absolutely nothing. And of course, she has millions in her pocket. Millions, people. This isn't a person who's got a few extra hundred or a few thousand in the bank. You're talking about millions, tens of millions. And made even more from her numerous books, more tens of millions. Let's stack up that room. She probably has a room where she just keeps her money in. So the whole idea is that's how these things go. So she decided she didn't want to have a traditional relationship, wanted to marry this bizarre guy who somehow convinced her and then sent her telegrams that he was working for the government that she believed. This is pre-email. So I guess this would be done email now, but telegrams that he was working for the government, he was this alien, etc., when he was just a playboy living off her money. It's hard to believe that, and I wonder if that's a true story in terms of, is there something more to that? And why would she be sending him so much money? He also was kind of a businessman, but he was also a movie producer and made movies and other things. He lived in Japan, where she carted off her daughter to, claiming that her daughter was under physical threat because she was involved. And why was she involved with the Rat Pack? Huh? the biggest guys at the time. She hung around with them, and of course, she was that little girl that took their lunches. Yeah, right, honey. Suck, suck, suck. Oh, what was that? Yeah, honey. Let's get out the wire. Get Shirley over here. Well, the point is, these guys didn't necessarily need this little red-headed goofball when they had hundreds of women wanting them 24/7. But you have to wonder. But she, of course, had no problem, like is the problem with most women, of having her knees touch each of her ears anytime she felt like it, while dissing other people who were basically good guys and everything else. So the bottom line is that she married this nutball and then carted her daughter over there. And he was a quite bizarre, strange person who did a lot of nasty, dirty, rotten things, including to her daughter. And of course, on the summertime, she would take her daughter back, supposedly, and they would stay together for a few weeks, not the entire months. I'm not entirely sure. And she would buy him clothes, and that was supposed to take care of her for the rest of the year. You know, kind of like some middle-class family where you went over to Daddy's and he bought you a few things for school coming up. But there wasn't much there, Shirley, and there wasn't any money there. You were too busy flying over to Sweden and being with all the old timer there who speaks old Swedish, who is a channel. And the Swedish guy talks about the pyramids. And she had no problem staying at a first-class hotel. And, of course, this British politician who was a socialist, who was married, she made sure she ran there. And this was her love. Her love. The married man. How convenient, you messed up broad. I mean, how many times have you heard this ridiculous story that women want people that they can't have? And of course, yes, that's good karma, honey. You're studying karma and reincarnation, and it's okay to fuck his marriage up. So unless there's an agreement or an open marriage where this is considered okay, and a lot of women want this because they are not sexual creatures, so they would prefer their husbands have sex with other people. Now, this is quite common. Also, he's a politician, etc. But another, it's the same old story I've seen here, which really gripes me with New Agers and religious people and everything else, is that they're crying for the poor people as they screw everybody else over. She's crying that we have to help the poor and other things and worried about karma and so forth, but here she's not even taking care of her own daughter. There's no mention of it. There's one mention in this book of her daughter. And this was when they were still kind of having good terms. And the fact that reincarnation means that my daughter could have been my mother. Is that why you didn't take care of her? You expected her to take care of you? So it's all in all, through this entire book and all of her material, it's 100% me, myself, and I. She's extremely self-centered. She doesn't care about anybody. This is a personal quest so she can feel good about anything. So, of course, we are talking about here, and her book was published in 1983, but it goes back at least maybe 10 years when she had all these experiences. So, you're talking about in the early 70s, 60s, etc., when this was all big. Certainly, reincarnation, it ain't nothing new, Shirley, and it wasn't new in 1983 either. Now, people don't understand how we know all about reincarnation, psychic power, telekinesis, but this was really not the case. There was an explosion in the 70s, and you were either with it or not. There were book clubs that people joined, and you would get stuff on this, but, was it interest or not? And, I don't know how many people were interested, but there was a massive amount of information published on psychic power, games made, Milton Bradley and the ESP game from Kreskin, and there were many, many of these. So this is not something that was just poo-pooed. So you're talking about that in Milton Bradley, and this was beside other games like Life and Monopoly, that this was something that everybody was getting into. So how popular it was, I don't know. None of that was in my personal family. My mother did join the occult book club and started getting books. At that time, though, the Catholic Church came out and said you shouldn't get this, naughty. And of course, my imbecilic, cowardice father, who never did anything in life, had no interest in that either. He liked the enslavement of the Catholic Church and showed up, of course, when he felt like it on Sundays, of course, to pretend like he was a Christian. And again, with the morals of let's help the world, let's give to these charities, and you'd get these African charities come in and give a few extra bucks. Yeah, but he didn't take care of his entire family. Same type of thing that all these hypocrites do. I've never met a hippy-dippy from the 60s and their free love and their Volkswagen vans that wasn't a rotten scumbucket to his own family. And I could go on and on with personal instances of that, which people who are bleeding for the world and hating everybody else. But when it really comes down to it, they're nasty people. It's just, you kind of grew up in that and you follow through with that kind of imbecilic belief system. But it really doesn't come out in your life at all, just like it didn't come out in her life. So, this book may be interesting to people who are just getting into metaphysics. Is it new to you? Well, this is kind of an awakening book that talks how she awakened, what she ran into personally, the conflicts she had with friends and well, not really family. She doesn't have any family. She hardly ever mentions her parents, and certainly doesn't hardly ever mention her daughter, who is shipped out in Japan, thousands of miles away, based on the fact that her life was threatened because Frank Sinatra was in trouble with the mob, and they were going to kill her daughter. Well, I find that very, very strange. That would even happen, because that would cause some really serious problems. And I'm not sure that the mafia would want to do that. Apparently that all got smoothed over anyway. But they forgot that she was sent away, apparently, and just said, oh, why did we, oh, we did that for that. Oh, yeah, that was 5 years ago. But here she is flying to Sweden to talk to someone who speaks in Old Swedish with and get absolutely no information. And that's one thing you'll find in this book. There's really nothing has happened of any credibility with her contacts with anybody. There's really nothing that comes up. There's a few psychic things. I think Ryerson, who she's famous, a channel who gave her some good. But I mean, a lot of this stuff is so personal and has some interesting, if you're personally involved in it, as the key word become, you have to go out on your limb, out on a limb. And everybody would tell her this to kind of be the trigger, because she was told this initially by one psychic, and they all knew it. Dun, 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 dun. Well, I understand that, and personally, maybe that's impressive. But she's like everybody else that comes from a very low mentality, egotistical level, and really has never learned anything. This is a super rich person who's never really struggled in her life, and has had millions and millions of dollars, and does her meditation on the Beverly Hills beaches, otherwise known as Malibu, and this is her meditation land with the other rich people. So, all this stuff is the same old nonsense. So it's hard to, and how can she relate to anything? She has no real normal life. She has no real relationships. As usual, as a typical actress, she has stated that she fell in love with every one of her co-stars. Well, this is very typical in Hollywood, particularly of women and actors in general. It's one reason why they've always had reputations of being loose. She tries to act like she is this virginal type that wasn't loose, even though she's screwing married men and every co-star she can get her hands on and everybody else. So I don't buy that for a second. And why wouldn't she? She doesn't have anything. But maybe she waived her little fake marriage, and that's what it was for, and saying, well, I'm married and have a kid. Who knows? I don't know if that's a game she played or not, but I don't doubt it. She made sure she was having very nasty love affairs with this married British politician who was a typical socialist, which didn't believe in anything metaphysical, was using the system, and very hypocritical. So you got to remember that a lot of people think that socialism, communism, Russia is so open to metaphysics and psychics because they're non-religious. Well, it's not true. The Russians and all socialists have always considered psychic empowerment, the success sciences, manifestation science, as to be mumbo-jumbo mysticism in kin with religion. So they're always against it. What happened in Russia is one of the Russian presidents, or whatever the hell they are, got sick. And a psychic healer healed them. Not sure which one of the presidents this was, which one of their elitas, their Führers, because you got to remember that Nazism and Russian communism is the same. They're just branches of the same filth. So the whole idea is that we need to understand that. So he got cured by this, and all of a sudden, because he got cured, that he was going to die from, that all of a sudden they started doing studies and looking for healers, etc. So that's what happened, and that's where this change happened. I believe it happened in the 40s or 50s. I'm not sure when that actually happened. But generally, this is considered silly mysticism by socialistic types who are not supposed to be into fantasy religions, or as Mao Zedong said, religion is the opiate of the people. And quite true. So, as you get involved in that, we do have to understand that. So he was very conservative, and she claims she loved him. And she met him just briefly. She saw him at some party. They got together, humped, the usual not. She didn't have any relationship with him. They didn't date. She knew nothing about him. She was a kind of sympathetic, even though I don't know if there's any money put in. All these bleeding hearts liberals out there. Well, what has she ever done for anybody? She supported some politicians, maybe gave a little money. But again, I don't find any great activities. And certainly she's not opening her mouth against the Hollywood horrible system, as we found out about recently. She has nothing negative to say about anybody in Hollywood. And we know they're all great, great people. You never had nothing to say about them. And she loved everybody. You know, just like Hitchcock, who was known to be the horniest little guy there was out there. So the whole idea is he victimized women constantly. This is a known fact. And she escapes all of it. I'm the little redhead. I got a husband and a kid. I don't know what she did, or did she just drop to her knees? I'm not really sure what her reality was. But all of this is a problem because, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how good and pure it is or how the inventor of something puts it out. When the individual gets it, they're going to pervert it into their understanding, which is pretty bad. And certainly hers is. This is no genius here. This is a dancer actress. And actors in general tend to be kind of stupid people. They're hollow. They're supposed to take on a part, and they have way too much, just like sports players. They're paid way too much for something that should be virtually minimum wage. If you can act for a living, you ought to make an okay living out of it. You shouldn't be a millionaire from it because it doesn't do much for society. And the actors of 50, 60 years ago, who a damn? That's right. You'll never hear from them again. They don't leave anything from someone. People who get into movies and other things, well, we all do, and maybe you're seeking something better. I mean, in this day and age, there's a lot better in some profound movies that have a lot of things in it that you could. But generally, movies are pretty vacuous and always have been. So these stories, the historical stories that Hollywood puts out, are usually pretty messed up. The facts are wrong, and you wonder why they do this. Generally, there ain't much to think about in many movies, and certainly is nice when you're in a giant screen, you go into a trance state to watch movies. It is interesting, but let's get real, people. These can be used to trigger other things like everything else. I mean, there are some profound movies like the Matrix series, but this is kind of rare. And then people take really garbage type movies like Star Wars and make them into something special when there's very little there to begin with. And I will be covering that in another video. But here we go again. So she runs to Sweden, goes into a 5-star hotel, cling, cling, 500 a night. Stays there, flies there, first class, 5,000, cling, and her daughter has nothing. She's sitting at home, left alone, night after night, in Japan. And She's trying to call this politician every. Oh, honey, can't we go in home, please? I need you. I love you. Oh, make sure your wife is thrown off a bridge. Ooh, I'm Shirley. So the whole idea here is we get into these nonsensical things. Not once does she think about or mention in her books, and I think this is very profound, of calling her daughter someone that you're connected to, supposedly you love, or for that matter, anybody else. It's Shirley's world. Well, I don't hear her saying, well, I called my best friend, I called my mother, I called... No. It's Shirley. It's all about me. Screw you. So this is basically what it comes down to. So, everything that she interprets and goes through her pea brain and the people that she met is a real problem. And there really isn't anything when you get down to it. We're going to get into these other things here. So she's had the very typical LA Hollywood thing that she's went into. She met some metaphysical people there, which quite frankly are everywhere. But I don't know why LA gets it. Because, LA doesn't even really have very many metaphysical bookstores. Everybody goes to one bookstore there called the Bodhi Tree, which closed about 5 years ago because nobody really gave a damn, and they didn't take care of the business right, and it was there for 40 years. But it was really a poor bookstore ultimately, and I'm going to talk about that because it's kind of a bit of metaphysical history. Oh, she went there, got some books, talked to the slob that runs that place. Yes, reincarnation. Most people believe in that. Yeah, that's right, and it was in the Bible. Yeah. Okay. Well, but of course, this is 1970s, so this isn't as known as we have it today, apparently. So the whole idea is we have all these realities. So from there, she met other people, and certainly, particularly in the 70s, LA was loaded with metaphysical people. There were thousands of books published in the 60s, 70s, and into the middle 80s, metaphysically based. I mean, there are institutes everywhere on Kundalini, the chakras, TM. I mean, they were going everywhere. People were going to these classes. It was people you don't understand unless you're involved. Now, I was a little young at that time, but even I was doing yoga and experimenting with the Indian nonsense traditions, which were considered more acceptable in society because this was done by yogis. Yes, well, beautiful. Where is your credit card? So the whole idea is that all of these things that are involved in these processes were very big then. And of course, everybody needs to understand that, metaphysical books, all books now, 60% of all book sales go through Amazon and that sort. So that was part of the reason why stores closed. But, there's only one basically occult shop in all of Los Angeles, if you can believe that. Panpipes, which is apparently still going. A tiny little store. It must be 25 feet by 25 feet at the most. This is your big occult shop in LA. So people don't understand that occult shops are not. Now, New Age bookstores, again, they're scattered here and there, but they're all pretty pathetic. Of course, nobody understands any of this stuff, and that's the way it goes. But I'll talk about the LA bookstore cult scene in another audio, which I think would be interesting. I mean, this is historical that people don't really know about and will disappear very soon. So she's making out with this guy, and they're meeting, and they're talking the horny stuff that you do when you've got bad sex going on. Oh, yes, darling, it's the greatest sex I've ever had. Yes, if we can just cheat some more, maybe we get a hump in the street or in a taxi. Oh, it's so fun. Well, we understand all that, and of course, when you get into certain ages and so forth, and the problem is that most people's relationships and wives, I mean, they are non-sexual beings. They have kitties, and it's gone, and if anything, they're boring. So this is all the things we understand, but, she could have a lot of people. She could have anybody. She could have had interesting people, profound spiritual people, a socialist British politician who's married? Really? Well, I think that says a lot about her. And the fact that she dropped thousands of dollars and made hundreds of phone calls trying to connect to this guy while her daughter was sitting in a home alone from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next morning as a child, with nobody to communicate with and nothing there. As well as not giving her a penny, apparently, even up to this day, and she avoids it. I just listened to an interview with her that was made in the last year or two, and she was asked about her daughter, and she avoided it. I don't want to talk about it. Of course you don't want to talk about it. It's not on your website. It's not mentioned in any of your books. This just makes her story much more potent and profound. The bottom line is that you did nothing. It's all about Shirley. It's all about me. She's got the ego the size of Mount Everest, and all she's got is garbage New Age information, which has been culled from the dustbins and trash and toilet bowls of philosophy, put together in a stinking pile of poo into a leather-covered nonsense book. That's what you get. And that's why it's so important to move past that. But very few people get past it. They get trapped in goofball spirituality. They're going to go to India. They're going to go to Asia. They're going to go wherever it is. And they're going to get this. Or they're going to join some goofball type religion and follow somebody else. This is the traps. Getting past it and following the path of gnosis, meaning you're following truth, and being able to disregard these false garbage paths is very difficult. And it takes a very special type of person. Certainly, she didn't. So it's the same old story with her, me, myself, and I. And she talks about all her stuff, and we go through her basic talking to people, channelers she ran into. And I'm not sure how. The point is, you read what's in these books and see what's in them. And this has been made into a movie, by the way, a 5-hour movie. It is up on YouTube, so people should look that out. Out on a Limb movie. I'll try and put a link below, but none of our links work. I wonder why that is. Truth is hard for YouTube to get out there. That would be something horrible to do, wouldn't it? So the whole idea is that she goes through this and how so many people looked at her strange and odd and etc. Now, I didn't know who all these people were, but we just went through the wild-ass 60s where people were believing into everything, taking every drug on the planet, humping everything they could. So I don't know who these people are. She was involved with a very bizarre group, but of course, she was involved with a very rich group. But there are things that she was involved with. For someone who claims that she is not, and they show in the movie here that I'm afraid to get naked in the pool here. Oh, I don't want to show my ass. You want to show your ass? You're a dancer. You're like a model. You're nothing but a piece of plastic. What are you talking about? And she's ran around stage with tight stuff on that you see every crack in her body. Who the hell are you fooling here? That she's got this experimental relationship, that she's screwing married men, the typical type of woman that does that. And it isn't two busy business people that get together for the physical release. She's doing this for her perverted love, and she thinks she loves this guy. Of course, all women who date married men think they love them, or at least a percentage of them. That takes them out of the slut game. I'm not a slut. I love him. No, you're a slut of the worst type. So she's with that. She knows all these celebrities. Everybody treats her great. She's getting Academy Awards. She's making millions of dollars. She's writing book after book. And again, she gets, for a really kind of a nasty mouth little turd that she gets away with a lot because she's an actress, and of course apparently knows everybody, from David Hawkins, who she discussed reincarnation with, who, by the way, David Hawkins believes he is the reincarnation of a famous scientist. I forget his name, the one that all science is based on. Escapes me at this minute. He actually believes that. So, and was vocal about it, that he actually is the reincarnation of this famous scientist. Interesting. So it's not as strange as people think they are. So the point is that she found reincarnation coming from the imbecilic, non-educational, I live in the dance hall reality that she came from, and thinks this is kind of weird. So I don't know where people live in. So the whole idea, certainly this was going on, and particularly the yogis and the yogic schools were all over the place in the 60s and 70s into the 80s. There were literally thousands of them, and there were institutes that specialized in this. And there are still different ashrams and other things that are in different places in Southern California that are still operating. So, I just don't get where this is so odd to her. But, of course, she went from Malibu, Beverly Hills of the ocean, to Beverly Hills. So she's living in this world where apparently these kind of people weren't being bumped into. So this is a real problem and understanding that everybody has to come to know where she's coming from. So she went and she started reading here, going to the Bodie bookstore, Bodie Tree Bookstore in West Hollywood, which I've been to many, many times, and started reading everything there and expanded. That's where she got her consciousness. So she put the time in. Of course, she had the time. She had millions of dollars. Actresses and everything else don't work all that much, and she certainly didn't have to. She was lauded over. As I said, personally, I have no use for anything she's ever done, and I certainly wouldn't spend any time to do it. What she won the Academy Award for, I've never even seen that picture, whatever that was, but boring, common drama. So the whole idea is that, so this was happening pretty much in the 70s, most of this to her. Because you got to remember, this was published in 83, probably took a year or two to publish it. So you're talking about most of these things happened in the 70s, probably early 70s. So she goes with all this stuff. She's meeting all these special people because the doors are thrown open for her. While her daughter is sitting penniless somewhere in some private school that she can't even dial a phone. Now, they did have phones back then. People didn't have cell phones, and they weren't able to be gotten as easy as they are today. But the bottom line is that phones were there. Phones tend always to be expensive. Of course, something that she probably had a problem with. She didn't want to call her daughter because it probably cost her $10. Now, you could call anywhere, anybody, anytime in the world for you. You've been able to do this for about 50 years. The problem is you call somebody, and even today, if you're not using some of the free phone services, it will cost you a lot of money. You speak on the phone an hour or two to someone in New York if you're in America, and you'll spend $200. They're still doing that. But we know she had a flight to Sweden and meet her little horrible, and she didn't have money for her children. So the whole idea is this is exactly, and it's annoying and obscene when you think about it, because I've seen this kind of action from other people, and it just grates me. So this is what this fancy-dancy movie star was doing, including buying, typical things that she bought, clothing, other things that cost a few $1,000s, while she wouldn't even buy a trash car for her child. And then put up a whole $500 and then wanted that money back with interest. And she didn't want to pay for anything because, after all, cuckoo, where's my little horrid boy? I've got to run to Sweden and spend $5,000. Now, very typical of this kind of trash woman. So let's make sure that we understand the typical mentality. And this is very typical of so many people in general. And their false reality. So it's pretty hard to think of reincarnation, thinking you're a positive person, when you're really abusing a child, leaving her with a psychotic guy you have never even know, who lives in Japan, who did all sorts of crazy stuff and was sexually inappropriate with his daughter there, and everything with it. And of course, let's also understand that she claims to be such conservative sexually, or to a degree. I'm not sure. She goes back and forth on that. Well, to an all woman, they'll screw the biker who stinks like a trash can, but they'll never give a good guy a break. Now, but she had living at her house in Mulabul. The two big sex experts of the 70s were living with there, and actually were counseling her daughter at one particular stage when she was, I believe, 17 and a half or whatever. So she had these sex. So what were these sex experts doing there? And were they smoking pipes and drinking well, sex is this thing you do. You gotta be kidding me. This is the 70s, baby. This is the fact that there's all sorts of things going on there. And, of course, she's not going to talk about that as either. But she's going to cover up when she goes to Peru into a hot tub. God forbid she should help that guy who's training him and give her what little she has to offer, which is part of her sexuality. Oh, no. Yeah, of course, she got nothing. But the Brit got something, man. Yeah, I got it good. Hey, mate. So the whole idea is that this is the kind of nonsense that went on. But, but we've got to understand this. This is what people are like. So this is why I always have trouble taking anybody seriously. What is the filter of information? Now, so that's what she did. What it culminates with here is eventually getting involved with this particular guy who claims to have had contact with the Palladians, who met a Palladian entity who gave him some sort of information and empowerment. Now, he demonstrated some psychic abilities. One of them in the movie is shown is that he drives his car without his hands on the wheel. So, and so forth. Now, she was very terrified by this because apparently the car wasn't going too good. Is that good control? Well, I don't think you should be able to steer a car perfectly, not to the fact of maybe getting into an accident. But that's more producer stuff. I don't know sure what was really going on there. So the whole idea is that he claims to have had, with no proof whatsoever, contact with this Palladian person that spent time to cultivate him. He was Bethel. So the whole idea is that, yeah, me too, I got IQ of 4. So the whole idea is that he was special, and this Palladian stayed around him until he opened up to her. It's pretty hard to do that. It's pretty hard to walk around. I'm an extraterrestrial. I will help you. Okay. I'll have a beer. So the whole idea is that those things that are involved in there, we need to understand how odd this is. So, and again, this was in Peru. What he's doing in Peru, what he's doing there, and so forth. But this is, Peru is known for its extraterrestrial contact. But again, very little has come from this. So, I remember in the Bill Jenkins show, which we have some of those on the YouTube channel you're watching right now, where he talks about UFOs and activity there. They couldn't get any decent shots. As a matter of fact, the extraterrestrials tended to be hostile. They were blowing up buildings and stuff. Very bizarre stories which weren't fully told on the Bill Jenkins show. But what was coming out is that they produced nothing. And what happened with Bill Jenkins and all the free energy? Well, where is it? Nothing ever happened. They had pictures. They had working free energy. It's all gone. Now, I don't know what happened with that entire story. He got old, faded away, and that's that. And, of course, nothing has ever happened. And we still don't really have any kind of decent footage. And, of course, whatever that means, because everything is faked. So we got little blips in the sky, things moving around, and then the Navy's coming and saying, well, we don't know what this is. Well, that doesn't mean anything. So this guy did this, and they got together and had their little trip there and took her out. But she didn't meet any extraterrestrials. She didn't see anything of any great importance. They didn't land a ship. She didn't have contact. And I don't know how truthful she's being with anything or what she's actually experienced or not. When it comes to extraterrestrials and stuff, she's very sketchy about the details of it. She doesn't come out and say, look, this is it, I met it. Now, I don't know if that's the smart thing or not to do, but the bottom line is that she's at an age and has enough money that she should be able to come out and be much more blatant than she is. Now, I'm getting into, she's written a book of the things I know for sure and the things I think are right. This should help sum up what she's learned in her entire life. So I'm going to probably get that book next. I mean, the rest of her books go into different things. I'm not sure what it all means. I don't need her gumball philosophies that she perpetrates. I don't think she has anything to offer past the same old Robbie Mommy junk. So she does that, and the guy stays there, and she leaves and goes back. And this was her big introduction into everything. And the experiences that she went out of body a little bit. She had psychic communication. Well, looking back now and where we are at this particular time, these kind of experiences are kindergarten. We just expect this stuff. Out of body is considered. We got people that claim they went into filing cabinets and they looked at boats and stuff, and all these remote viewer lies that we get. So the whole idea is, but this is pretty much rolls off everybody's tongue who's involved in any of this stuff. So astral projection, all these things. Now you got to remember that in the 70s, this was still pretty new. It was being discussed. There were very classic books being published that time, but it's now become kind of second nature to anybody in alternative science, the New Age, manifesting sciences. Well, who doesn't know what telekinesis is? Who doesn't know what astral projection is? Remote viewing. All of this stuff is common. Now, it wasn't when she was learning this, from what I can see. On the other hand, there was an explosion of it in the 60s and 70s where people were everywhere. So I'm a little bit confused because that was the golden age that we're talking about. Where, as I've mentioned, they had ESP games, 3, 4, 10 different types on the shelves in your local store. Your bookstore was jammed with these books if you were looking for them. So, and it was very open and even accepted, even the term occult was. What happened in the 1980s when Reagan got into office, the right-wing Christian nut jobs came on to stomp on all this stuff and discredit it as demonic. Of course, now they are working with the Satanists, and they were probably Satanists all the way around. So certainly, it hasn't helped any. And of course, regular Christianity is a worthless belief system. And the people that are involved in it are just as screwed up as old Shirley is here, if not worse, crying for the poor while they fuck everybody else over. So these are things that we have to keep in mind of what the entire reality of all this stuff is. So that was her big thing. She went down to Peru. She came back. Now, what she did after that, because this is her introduction, her awakening, you could say. And I think, as I said, if you're new to this area, that you may relate to this. And you may not know anything about reincarnation or meditation or mediums or anything else. So this book could be an introductory book for you by a person who maybe relate a little more to, because, hey, this is a movie star. That's why these people sell so much. That's because they're movie stars, and we kind of know them. Not really, but we think we do. And they're an average, couldn't get more any average than her. Even though it's interesting that she was able to take her brother, who was known as one of the biggest gigolos in Hollywood for his period of time, and he got into Hollywood as well and made a bunch of money. So it's very interesting how these things work. So, and apparently he had the same kind of self-centered attitude. He didn't do anything to assist his sister's daughter, and maybe he should have stepped in to assist there, have some communication. Apparently there was none there as well. But that figures, one piece of fruit doesn't fall too much further than the other one. So most likely the family values that she was taught, both children took on, which was the fact of really not bothering or helping others. So it is important that we look at it that way. So we'll have to see what else she has to say and serve him. But it's a big bunch of nothing here. This is her story, which she was able to make a fortune from it. I think a lot of people, if I look at the feedback on YouTube with the movies, people like the movie. They kind of relate to it. Or she's going through this, the poor, and I can just see the soap opera mind of your average nonsensical female. Oh, it's so romantic. She was screwing a married guy. Oh. But the point is, there's a lot of things behind this. But what's behind this is her total and complete disregard for anybody else, including anybody connected to people she was having affairs with, and right down to her own daughter. She also lives in a fantasy world, thinking that this guy, who she was sending $60,000 a month to, you get that in your head? $60,000 is a lot of money anytime. And this was even back in the 1980s, etc., while her daughter had nothing. So this is the kind of messed up mind you had, and she was convinced that this goofball, who couldn't in any way be an extraterrestrial. How was this ever proven to her? After all, she married him within 2 days or something ridiculous. This is the kind of mentality she has. Could be this being. And if it was, it's amazing how extraterrestrials and government people, or whatever she says they were, but he's supposed to be an extraterrestrial working with the government, needed her money. It just amazes me how gullible and rotten people are, and how easily taken they are. That she could be sending this. And it was verified because he sent her telegrams saying, thanks for the money, we're still out here working in space. And she believed it. She had a box of these telegrams. This is what her daughter states, and it seems to be facts. So, as best we can tell. And of course, she won't defend herself, Maclaine, or talk about these issues, or talk about even how, oh, I'm hurt by it. No, you're not hurt by it. You have nothing to say because all the facts have been stated and you can't refute them. She doesn't come back and defend herself whatsoever. There's not a single photo of her daughter on her now website, her active modern, what's the term here, her active website of modern date right now. Not a single mention of the daughter or a photograph of her. Is it so terrible that she came out? How is Miss Rich Bucket here being affected by this stuff? You think she could try and make amends here, but she has a relationship. It's her dogs. And she's written books on that, and I'm not sure how she helps dogs, poor other dogs, the millions that are murdered every month in this country that are put to sleep. Well, she claims to do a little bit of this, but I don't see any of that going on. I don't know how much of her tens or hundreds of millions of dollars are going into any of that. She lives in Malibu and now in New Mexico, I believe in Taos, New Mexico, up in a high place up there by herself with a few dogs. I find all of this a very dysfunctional person who doesn't get it. She's really not educated. She was exposed to a lot of stuff and believes a lot of Rami-Nami nonsense. This guy tells her things. I don't know if anything that this guy did in any way meant anything. Driving a car, and I'm not sure what went on there. It's hard to say the exact details to impress her. Could have been done very easily as a little bit of trick. The psychic experience you went through were very menial. So it was really nothing of any great effect, and this guy claimed to have been in contact with this extraterrestrial, but of course couldn't produce him or show it to her. Now, she wasn't really overly ready for that, but all of these things, it's very mediocre, and of course she could be impressed by anything. That's one of the problems with people and how all this stuff goes, is that if you're not into this area, you can be easily tricked with things. Like $5 magic tricks are quite amazing. You can get these at 7-Elevens, and you can do amazing tricks that'll baffle anybody when they're just illusions. So I don't know how easily she was or not. I'm not sure what this guy was saying. The whole idea was that this Palladian female contacted this other guy, and he was supposed to contact Shirley Maclaine. And I forget who this guy was. Well, I don't really care. But the whole idea is that he was then to get her to go out and write these important books so that they could help society with what? Here we go. We're talking about 40 years ago, and like everything going back to 40, 50 years ago of Bill Jenkins' show, which had practical technologies, nothing ever changes. She certainly hasn't changed. She certainly, as far as I know, she is supporting some charities, but I don't, certainly is no Shirley Maclaine foundation that's helping people, putting together courses that teach people. She's writing books and making more money so that her daughter can't get none. How nice. And she has no other family. I wonder who she's going to leave her money to, since she doesn't have any other family. So it's really sad. I mean, after all, she's in her 80s now, and she's getting more and more feeble, as you can see in recent interviews, where she's not quite there. And obviously, she is up there now. So let's find out exactly how old she actually is here. Oh my God, she's 87 now. So, and she's tired, old, and weak. So of course, that fits, doesn't it? So the whole idea is, I don't know where this is going to end with her and what she leaves, but she's going to leave her written books. And you could say, well, that's enough, but she didn't write those books to educate people because she had money. A lot of these books are written plain and simple. She's making money from it. Now, I don't hear of her saying she's donating the money. It goes here. Her brother, of course, Warren Beatty is her brother, who is known as one of the biggest, so has been alleged, one of the biggest gigolos in Hollywood, and made the famous movie with Shampoo that he was in. He made Reds and a few other terrible movies, but apparently was well paid for his work. And of course, she's known for the horribly tragic film that she was in. And of course, what was that? She got her another film I've never watched. Where is it here? I just thought I saw it here, but so the whole idea, she got an Academy Award for that. Jack Nicholson was in it. I don't need this. Terms of Endearment there in 1983, which is interesting. That's the same time she got the Academy Awards, the same time her book comes out. It kind of plays together, does it, to make sure it all works. And of course, 83 was when things were, it was, the New Age was fairly big still then, even though you were getting the negativity from the Reagan times that was coming in there and so forth, but certainly didn't hurt her sales. She sold a lot of her books just on her life because she's a famous actress, followed up with this book, sold a huge amount, and then she's published book after book of this stuff because her first husband, I went over this in other discussions on Her as a Bad Mother, Steve Parker, which she was married in 1954 and divorced him in 1982. So you can, which he just met briefly. So I don't know. So she wanted to make sure she had a little baby, had a husband, and why? I just don't get that. And then claims she never wanted a real relationship. Well, I'm not sure what's going on there as well. As I said, all this I find very ultimately bizarre. So I'll continue my research and report back on her other books. I would like to know what she's learned, what she believes is a fact. She claims to have had some sort of contact with extraterrestrials. She's seen many ships with thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people. Well, I even change that. Hundreds of millions of people have seen, maybe half the population, which could be billions, have seen UFOs. This is not anything special. Seeing lights in the sky, even showing interesting crafts and everything else, mean absolutely nothing. We just don't know whether they're military or earthbound, and we have to define these things. We just don't know. The government is up to such shenanigans that you can't really trust anything you see in the sky. The other thing is we've still had publicly very little is known or contact with from extraterrestrials, and rightfully so again. It's against intergalactic law, and what's the point of it? Well, they grab people and everything else, and this makes sense as well. What has she added to the big UFO thing? What has she brought back to us? What great wisdom? Reincarnation? Karma? Astral projection? What has she got? She got anything new? Is there any ways of healing people, balancing them? Well, if you're connected to higher sources of empowerment, you're not going to just get the world is coming to an end. And this is one of the gripes I've always have. And you hear this from people and it sells. Greg Braden, who's everywhere, he was talking about the world ending in 2012. Everybody forgets this stuff. And even 2000, oh, we're going to have these massive changes. You're filling your coffers again. Everything you've said is a lie. And then they come out with new stuff. But the bottom line is, what kind of spiritual and physical technologies have you developed to help change people's lives? And nothing comes to this. They don't have to make money. They just have to write nonsense books, which people read at night before they get up to their rotten job or have to contend with their illnesses or other. What has she done about this? Who has she supported? Did she come out and help Suzanne Summers when she was fighting for natural medicine? No. Did she come out here? From what I know, she hasn't said anything about Harvey Weinstein in Hollywood. Of course, she hasn't done things in 20 years, but the point is that everybody knows what's going on in a lot of these places. So I haven't seen her come out and really do anything. She's talking a lot of metaphysical mumbo-jumbo, and you see her on all the talk shows when she's got a new book to come out to hawk, to make more money from. Where are the proceeds from this going to? Well, it appears they're going into her bank. She lists a few charities that she's involved in, and we'll check those out quickly. Let's go over these quickly. I think I've went over some of these things. She supports a variety of children's programs, including the Barbara Davis Center for Childhood Diabetes, Adopt a Classroom, as well as the Motion Picture and Television Fund Foundation, which takes care of a lot of old actors, including the Three Stooges, who, a lot of people run out of money. They have no place to go, and they have no place to... Kirk Douglas was big into this, and they built a lot of stuff on, and yeah, you should help your own. I think that's good, but that's still helping your own. I don't know what the childhood diabetes is, if someone's been affected. Certainly that's a good cause, but who are these people? What do they do? Is there anything special they're doing? Are they making sure that they help all the many children out there that can't get any of the drugs they need? Adopt a Classroom? Don't really know what that means. Helping education into what? I don't see any metaphysical thing there. So she's helping to teach the children about all the garbage that they're known for. She states she loves animals. Several shelter dogs are at home on her ranch, and her two adopted rat terriers, Buddy and Trixie, are companions that provide constant immunion. They show a picture of her with about 4 dogs here. Well, that's doing a lot. Ooh, she saved 4 dogs. Ooh. And I'm not sure you saved. Doesn't say that. Shelter dogs. Okay, she got shelter dogs, and that's all she can handle on a giant ranch in Malibu. Must be tough, Shirley. Pretty bad effort. I mean, there are a lot of people that have rescues, and they need money to survive, and lots of it. So I don't hear about her supporting any of this. Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. But, I think people should be very public in who they help. Because if they don't, then it makes it look like they're doing nothing. And some people think that it's not good to talk about who you help. It's one of the other nonsense things. Apparently Steve Jobs did this. Of course, he screwed over his family as well. He had an illegitimate daughter, didn't give a dime to us. Another guy, yeah, I'm into mysticism, man. I smoke the dope. I ate the mushrooms. They named me Bottom Sucker in India. I mean, that's his background. Well, it's very typical of how these hypocritical people don't seem to have any problem screwing everybody over. And of course, these alternative religions help them, because regular religions generally want to get some dough from you. Apparently, this Barbara Davis Center is not only in diabetes, it's for women issues, stem cell, multiple sclerosis, cancer. They cover a wide variety of health issues. Now, how much she's giving there, and is any of that alternative? Is she that ignorant? But this seems to be a easy thing to latch onto, which seems to be based out of Colorado, using very traditional medicines. Is that what she learned from the aliens? Support the same doctors that are failing today, that have got no cures. We've spent trillions of dollars on medical research and we have not cured anything. I mean, they really can't even figure out how to balance your body with blood sugar. I mean, how difficult can that be? Why can't they fix that? They can't fix anything. So we can count on Shirley's bucks to go to the same companies that fail all the time. Hey, thank you, Shirley. You're supporting and enabling the same losers, but hey, people like them. It's a big shedder. Let's clap on that again. So we get into all these things that we have to understand. So these are all the things that gripe me about these people and how hypocritical they are. Certainly, she's nobody special. She has no level of enlightenment. She talks about things that are basically kindergarten in levels, whether it's extraterrestrial or other things. And if I find something that's really juicy and good and profound, I'll let you know in the other books that I start to read. But right now, if you want a little, if you're starting in this field and kind of shocked by it and have lived in a bag for the last 50 or 60 years. This movie in particular, I'm not sure I'd spend the time listening to the book like I did, but I did go and watch this long movie. It's a 5-hour movie to kind of look at her life and see the kind of person she is. But like everything in life, people, you got to understand, first of all, this is a movie. It's supposed to be factual. She's involved in it. She starred in it. She bent it her way. She made sure she was not screwing a married man. She was in love. It's the love boat. I can hear the music right now. Oops. Yeah. So the whole idea is we have to remember, read between the lines. And secondly, what has she got here? The fact that she had an occult epiphany. She tapped into some power, listened to some guy talk about the aliens he met at the drugstore on Hollywood and Vine. Well, the whole idea is that I'm not sure what any of that means. What does this come to? She had something happen to her which made a great life for her and made her very wealthy with all the books. I'd like to know the hundreds of millions of dollars she's made from her books. And we add that next to her movie money. Well, which one is more? So it's very interesting. Now she's 87. She's still dissing her daughter. I'm sure she's left her nothing, and she will leave her money to the Barbara diabetes thing, and they can come up with more rigged, worthless drugs that never cure anything. But in the end, remember, you'll die, but with a big bill. Oh, thank you, Shirley.